The Council's demand. Admiral Lawrence Walker stood at the command center's helm, his eyes fixed on the holographic display as the ultimatum from the Galactic Council faded into static. The room was silent, the air thick with tension. The alien representative, Volar, had delivered the most audacious demand. Earth was to pay a crippling annual tribute or face annihilation. Walker's fist cracked the glass table, the sound echoing the growing resolve in his chest. Humanity was no stranger to challenges, but this was a declaration of war. The Trill, a tyrannical species with a stranglehold over the galaxy, had grown fat on the tributes of weaker planets. Now, seeing Earth's rapid rise, they sought to crush humanity before it could challenge their dominion. But Walker knew humanity would never bow. In an emergency session of Earth's Leadership Council, grim-faced men and women debated their limited options. Many feared the Trill's vast armada, urging appeasement. But Walker had a different plan. A preemptive strike on the Trill, using Earth's most advanced warships. It was a gamble, but to do nothing was to accept a slow death under alien rule. Humanity had been preparing for this moment. For years, scientists had reverse-engineered captured alien technology, arming their fleet with railguns, nuclear missiles, and particle beams. Though they lacked the sheer numbers of the Trill, human ships were brimming with raw firepower and the unyielding will to survive. Walker's decision was made. They would fight. The question was not if humanity would survive, but how much they would sacrifice to protect their freedom. As the Council convened, the eyes of the galaxy turned toward Earth. Subjugated races across the stars watched anxiously. Would humanity stand against the juggernaut that had enslaved them all, or would they too crumble? The weight of this responsibility bore down on Walker, but his resolve was unshakable. If the Trill wanted Earth, they would have to fight for every inch of it. The fleet's departure. Earth's fleet assembled in high orbit, a collection of pristine vessels bristling with weaponry. Admiral Walker toured the ships, his heart heavy as he exchanged farewells with the crews. Every officer knew the risks. They were heading into the heart of the Trill Empire. And not all would return. Families on Earth watched their loved ones depart, the knowledge that this might be the last goodbye hanging heavily over them. On the bridge of his flagship, Walker's icy blue eyes scanned the stars as the fleet prepared for its leap to FTL. The command was given, and in an instant, the fleet vanished, leaving Earth behind in the cold expanse of space. The silence that followed was deafening. Back on Earth, the world held its breath, united in hope and fear. The battle for humanity's future had begun. The fleet emerged from FTL on the fringes of the Trill home system, the distant star illuminating the ships as they closed in on their target. Walker's fingers tightened around his chair as the sensor consoles lit up with activity. Trill warships had been detected, and they were closing fast. The battle would be upon them in moments. Admiral, Trill ships inbound. It's the Imperial Guard, led by the KRX, a voice called out. The KRX, the largest of the Trill's warships, commanded by Admiral Fleur, was a behemoth, its dark hull bristling with weaponry. Walker's heart pounded in his chest, but his voice was steady as he responded. This is Admiral Walker of the Terran Alliance. Stand down immediately, or we will engage. We will no longer tolerate your aggression and extortion. The reply was a guttural snarl from the alien commander, Volar. His voice, filled with contempt, echoed across the bridge. You dare issue ultimatums to the Trill Imperium. Your fleet is insignificant before our might. Prepare to be annihilated. The battle begins. The battle erupted in a blaze of energy beams and missile fire as the two fleets clashed. The void of space was filled with the deadly dance of destruction. Trill plasma lances impacted against human shields, causing the ships to shudder under the strain. But humanity was prepared. Railguns fired hypersonic slugs, and fusion missiles streaked toward their targets, tearing through the Trill's defenses with brutal efficiency. The KRX was a monstrous adversary, but even it staggered under the ferocious onslaught. A human nuke-pumped X-ray laser struck its shields, causing them to flare brilliantly as they absorbed the terawatt range blast. But the Trill warship held, its formidable defenses straining but unbroken. As the two fleets interpenetrated, the battle descended into chaos. Ships tangled in a close-quarters brawl, trading broadsides at point-blank range. Human and Trill vessels alike were torn apart, their hulks drifting lifelessly in the void. The human fleet was outnumbered, but their tenacity was unmatched. For every human ship that fell, 2 Trill ships were destroyed. On the bridge of his flagship, Walker watched the battle unfold with a grim determination. His ship was battered, but still in the fight. He spotted the KRX and ordered his ship to engage. The two behemoths exchanged devastating broadsides, their hulls buckling under the immense firepower. But the tide began to turn. Fresh Trill reinforcements arrived, overwhelming the human fleet with sheer numbers. Walker's heart sank as he watched his fleet, his people, being torn apart. The command came down to retreat, the battered remnants of humanity's fleet fleeing into the darkness, leaving behind a field of wreckage and loss. The aftermath. Volar watched the retreating human ships with a mix of triumph and unease. He had won the battle, but at an astronomical cost. His fleet was decimated, his ships reduced to floating debris. The humans had fought with a ferocity that unsettled him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The myth of the Trill's invincibility had been shattered, and that was a dangerous thing. Back on Earth, the battered remnants of the fleet limped into orbit. Walker stood on the bridge, his face a mask of exhaustion and grief. They had lost over 60% of their ships, and the Trill were still out there, licking their wounds and preparing for the next strike. But humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not go quietly into the night. They would fight until the very end. Walker was called to an emergency council meeting as soon as the fleet was back in orbit. The mood in the room was somber, the air thick with the weight of their losses. The holographic display showed the devastation in stark detail. The Trill's technology was beyond anything they had encountered, and their energy weapons had sliced through human shields like butter. "There's no way we can stand against them," one of the counselors said, his voice trembling with fear. "We have to negotiate, surrender before more lives are lost." Walker's fists clenched at the suggestion. Surrender was not an option. To do so would mean generations of slavery for humanity, a fate worse than death. "We cannot and will not surrender. If we do, we doom not just ourselves, but every enslaved race in the galaxy." The council was divided, but before the argument could continue, a young aide burst into the room, his face pale. "Sir, long-range sensors have detected a massive Trill fleet entering the system. They'll be here within hours." The last stand. Chaos erupted as the counselors crowded around the screens, watching the massive swarm of Trill ships burn toward Earth. At their center was the KRX, Volar's dreadnought, leading the charge. The situation was dire. Earth's remaining defenses were pitiful in comparison, and the Trill's arrival spelled doom. Walker's mind raced, formulating a desperate plan. He proposed pulling the remaining ships for a delaying action, while he led a small strike force directly to the Trill homeworld. The plan was audacious and fraught with danger, but it was their only chance. The counselors, seeing the resolve in Walker's eyes, reluctantly agreed. The fleet was prepped in record time. Crews said hurried goodbyes to their families, knowing this might be the last time they saw them. Walker stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Trill armada grow larger by the minute. This was it, the final stand. Earth's remaining ships would engage the Trill fleet, buying time for Walker's strike force to hit the heart of the Trill Empire. As the strike force rocketed away from Earth, space lit up with weapons fire. The battle for Earth had begun. Walker's ship accelerated to maximum speed, the fate of humanity now resting on the success of this mission. They had one shot, and Walker was determined not to miss. The Trill homeworld. The human strike force streaked through space, burning hot and silent as they approached the Trill homeworld. The crew was tense, their eyes fixed on the tactical displays as the battle for Earth raged in the background. The Trill Armada was immense, but Walker's focus was on the target ahead, the Trill Power Generator, a heavily fortified facility near their capital. The ship shuddered as it entered the Trill system, the crew bracing for the onslaught. Trill defenses opened fire, but Walker's ship was prepared. Countermeasures were deployed, confusing the enemy's targeting systems as they streaked toward the target. The countdown to impact was announced, and Walker's heart pounded in his chest as they neared the planet's surface. The ship's hull glowed red-hot as it entered the atmosphere, tearing through the skies toward the generator. The impact was brutal, but the ship held together, its nose burying itself deep in the ground. Walker ordered the troops to deploy, leading the charge out of the ship and into the heart of the enemy facility. The fighting was brutal. Trill soldiers, more massive and stronger than any human, rushed to defend the generator, but the humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Walker pushed forward, his eyes locked on the objective, cutting down any alien that stood in his way. Finally, they'd reached the generator. The team set charges, placing them at key points around the facility. Walker's fingers trembled as he set the detonator, knowing that this would either save humanity or condemn it. The charges were armed, and the team began their retreat, fighting their way back to the ship. The generator exploded with a massive fireball, tearing through the facility and sending a shockwave across the planet. The Trill's planetary shields flickered and then failed. Walker's ship blasted off, escaping the destruction as the Trill's capital descended into chaos. Humanity's victory. On the bridge, the crew erupted in cheers as the news came in. The Trill's power grid was down, their shields were gone, and the Armada had been thrown into disarray. Walker watched the chaos unfold on the tactical displays, his heart swelling with hope. Back on Earth, the remaining fleet had been holding off the Trill Armada, but barely. As the Trill forces crumbled, Earth's defenders struck back with renewed vigor. Human ships surged forward, smashing through the weakened Trill fleet with a vengeance. The KRX, its shields down and hull breached, was the last to fall. A human warship rammed it head-on, the resulting explosion lighting up the night sky above Earth. The remaining Trill ships scattered, their will to fight broken. Walker's ship returned to Earth, battered but victorious. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's strength and determination, and the Trill Imperium was in shambles. Word spread across the stars, and the subjugated races began to rise up, inspired by humanity's stand. The Trill Empire was no more, and humanity had won its place among the stars.